So I want to talk about how do we gently parent, how do we respectfully parent preschoolers with attitude, right? And that can be so hard because we are just so driven into the fact day after day that, you know, kids manipulate, kids are mean, they're bad kids, they're good kids. Instead of looking at it is that we all go through developmental phases, we all go through our different abilities as we grow up into people, and that preschoolers are very young. They are just transitioning out of the baby phase, and that even when they appear to be trying to manipulate you, right, what they're doing is they're looking at their environment and they're trying to figure out how do they do things, how do they influence things, how do they communicate their needs, how do they try to figure out that other people have needs. And it's not that they're being bad or that they're being manipulative. It's about looking at it from their perspective, right? And that there aren't bad children who are all trying to manipulate you. It's just all kids being self-focused, trying to figure out how to get around in the world. So the first way that you can really try to respectfully and gently parent your preschooler is to ask them questions and to listen. And I know that so frequently I'm guilty of, you know, I'll ask my son a question, he'll want to tell me something, and I'm distracted. I'm thinking about my phone, I'm thinking about my computer, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about family stuff, I'm thinking about cleaning or making food or, you know, life things, and I'm not really listening when I'm asking him a question or when he's talking to me. So the first thing you can do is to really listen. And sometimes I'll be in the moment, I'll be good, I'll be listening, and, you know, I'm there and I'm connecting with him, but even then, the second part of that is hearing what your preschooler is saying, right? When you ask them a question, when they want to tell you something, sometimes what a preschooler can communicate, let's be honest, most of the time, maybe there's a subtext there of what they're really saying, because they don't yet have that complexity of understanding themselves to communicate what they're really saying. And so it's kind of our jobs as moms and dads to figure out what it is they're really saying by hearing them while we're listening. And that is a huge, powerful thing to be able to gently parent any preschooler. Like, if you can't hear them, if you can't hear what they're saying and trying to communicate in their own way, it is so hard to be understanding and respectful and kind, and to then, you know, request that back for you, require that back as the parent to be respected and to have your child be kind to you, right? So much about the whole idea of gentle parenting, right? It's not, you can do anything you want, kid, go be as bad as you desire. It's about, you know, showing and presenting as the parent and modeling behavior that you want your child to emulate, which is being respectful and kind and gentle and thoughtful. And that, you know, by doing that from an early age, children are learning when they are first wiring their brains the behavior that is good and acceptable and gets good outcomes, right? You get communication, you get more kindness, more gentleness back, and that's really powerful. But you can't really do that as a parent unless you're hearing and listening to what your little preschooler is saying. That's so valuable. I know, did you like that transition? You're like, ooh, Rose, such a good transition. Because we're talking about transitions with a preschooler, right? Because they're going from babyhood to kind of, they're becoming a kid in this preschool age, right? A really powerful thing you can do is to limit your expectations. And I know you're, but I have really high expectations. My child is going to go to Harvard at 8, and, you know, then they're going to be a Rhodes Scholar, and it's going to be amazing, and they're going to be super successful, and then maybe they'll be in the NFL, and they'll buy me a jet. And these are my expectations, and they just have to do that by like 14, that's all. That'll be fine, yeah, you know. We have such high expectations. Those are not expectations of a small preschooler, right? I'm joking in case you're like, oh my God, Rose, that's a horrible expectation for your child. What I'm showing you is a really exaggerated example of how they feel about their expectations. When we have expectations for a little preschooler that are way above their developmental, their physical ability to do, it's as crazy as saying, hey kid, why aren't you in an Ivy League school? You're 3, you're 4, you're 5 already, come on, get on it, right? It's just as unreasonable to expect my son's 4, a 4-year-old, to do certain behaviors, to model certain patterns that you've explained to them and shown them, when they can't yet, because they just aren't there, right? Their brains are not done forming, their responses aren't done, their impulse control isn't there. They just aren't ready yet, because they're still little tiny things learning how to navigate in the world. So I know for me, I am so much less frustrated, I get less grumpy, and I'm a nicer person, a nicer mom when I lower my expectations and they become reasonable. And I don't mean to say that you should excuse, you know, tons of tantrums, and if your kid's aggressive or just refusing to listen, right? Those are them communicating something that you have to hear to then figure out how to help them get through that and not need to have those tantrums, or help them be able to listen, right? What I mean by lowering expectations is to realize, you know, a good example is when I go on a road trip with my son, and you're going to see, or will have seen, I'm not sure when I'm going to post it, I haven't decided yet, our day in the life while we were RVing. And, you know, realistic expectations are how many snacks he's going to need to be happy, how long during the day he can drive, how much cuddle and skin-to-skin time he needs, how much play time he needs, what kind of preschool activities he needs to learn. And that expectations are really important so that your child doesn't feel like they're constantly disappointing you or constantly frustrating you. Imagine from a little person's perspective, they've been your apple of your eye, your little baby, and then suddenly they aren't meeting your expectations and they know it. And that is so painful and difficult for them to understand. It's just not fair for them to put those expectations on them. So just rein in those expectations and keep it reasonable for a little preschooler. So another and final thing that I wanted to put on this list is to always tell your preschooler that it is okay to be having the emotions and the feelings that they're having. And my son has sensory processing disorder and some delays in things that do make it a little bit harder for him to process interactions and stimulation, right? That it can be a little more overwhelming for him. But this is universally true for all children, is to make them feel safe and secure in expressing those feelings. But, and this is a really important but that I've tried to explain to my son over and over again, is that there are rules to things. You know, we can't have giant fits in the grocery store because we're having a big feeling, right? We can have those feelings, we can feel these things, but we need to display them and process them in ways that are okay, that doesn't hurt anybody else, that doesn't interrupt things. You know, if you're out in public or if you're with family having a family dinner or something, right? And so I always try to be careful about how I word things to my son so that he feels good telling me these feelings, showing these big feelings to people, but that he doesn't just then disrupt everything around him without being thoughtful, right? So I try to explain to him to have big feelings, but to be thoughtful about, you know, how are we displaying them? Are we thinking about, do they seem reasonable, right? Did that rock look at us funny? Do we need to fling ourselves in the parking lot and, you know, try to bite a tire of a car? No, because, you know, it's okay to have that feeling, but the reaction that we have to those feelings need to be reasonable. And you can choose the language according to what your child understands and what your family lingo is to help explain to them boundaries and appropriate situations, that it's always fine to feel the feelings you are feeling, no matter how big or small, but that there are basic ways that are appropriate to display those emotions, right? And that's hard to explain to a tantruming child. Trust me, I've been there. I mean, sack of potatoes over my back, we're going back to the car! But it really helps to just from an early age explain that to your child, hear them and listen to them so that you know where those big feelings are coming from and maybe help them figure out where they're coming from. But, you know, keep your expectations within check so that you know that doesn't mean they're going to be like, oh, mother, I'm so frustrated. I wanted those gummy bears today, but I know it's inappropriate to throw a fit. They aren't going to be like that, right? But you're opening up this line of dialogue, this line of communication with you and your child, so that in the long run, you have beautiful communication, which is a huge key to a good relationship with your preschooler and beyond. I hope that that is helpful, that answers some of the questions I get about gentle parenting for preschoolers, because I know I'm in the thick muck and mud with you there, going, there's a little preschooler right over there grunting and making sounds. So whenever you see weird cuts in this, it's because he asked me a 25-minute question. I had to stop and answer. Because parenting is tricky and complex, and you know, there aren't right and wrong ways to do it, but it's helpful to have suggestions and tips from other moms and dads as we're all in this together as this wonderful parenting community here on the Wholesome Feed. So until my next video, you can always follow along. We post a ton on Instagram, and I do Insta stories on there and lots of photos. And I would love it if you went and checked out some of my t-shirts and homeware and mugs on my Zazzle shop. I love it when you click on over there and buy some of those. It's a wonderful way to help support this channel. And I don't know if you know this because I only mention every video, am a romance author. I write romance novels. So if you love great, saucy, fun romance novels, you can click over the link in my description box for my author bio on Amazon, and it links to all the Kindle editions of my romance novels. Hey, I will see you all around. Big breath. Parenting can be hard and fun and amazing, and sometimes it's just good to get ideas and different perspectives to help us be the best mom or dad that we can be. I will see you all over. Hey, thanks for subscribing, giving these a thumbs up if you like them, and letting me know what you would love to see next, what other parenting questions you have for the Wholesome Feed. I'll see you all around.